of 101 famous poems. The Gods of the Copybook Headings. By Rudyard Kipling. Spoken and with commentary by E. T. Hansen. As I pass through my incarnations in every age and race, I make my proper prostrations to the gods of the marketplace. Peering through reverent fingers, I watch them flourish and fall, and the gods of the copybook headings, I notice, outlast them all. We were living in trees when they met us. They showed us each in turn that water would certainly wet us, as fire would certainly burn. But we found them lacking in uplift, vision, and breadth of mind. So we left them to teach the gorillas, while we followed the march of mankind. We moved as a spirit listed. They never altered their pace, being neither cloud nor windborne, like the gods of the marketplace. But they always caught up with our progress, and presently word would come that a tribe had been wiped off its ice field, or the lights had gone out in Rome. With the hopes that our world is built on, they were utterly out of touch. They denied that the moon was Stilton. They denied she was even Dutch. They denied that wishes were horses. They denied that a pig had wings. So we worshiped the gods of the market, who promised these beautiful things. When the Cambrian measures were forming, they promised perpetual peace. They swore if we gave them our weapons, that the wars of the tribes would cease. But when we disarmed, they sold us and delivered us bound to our foe, and the gods of the copybook headings said, "Stick to the devil you know." On the first Feminian sandstones, we were promised the fuller life, which started by loving our neighbor and ended by loving his wife, till our women had no more children, and the men lost reason and faith. And the gods of the copybook headings said, "The wages of sin is death." In the Carboniferous epoch, we were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay for collective Paul. But though we had plenty of money, there was nothing our money could buy, and the gods of the copybook headings said, "If you don't work, you die." Then the gods of the market tumbled, and their smooth-tongued wizards withdrew, and the hearts of the meanest were humbled, and began to believe it was true, that all is not gold that glitters, and two make four, and the gods of the copybook headings limped up to explain it once more. As it will be in the future, it was at the birth of man. There are only 4 things certain since social progress began: that the dog returns to his vomit, and the sow returns to her mire, and the burnt fool's bandaged finger goes wobbling back to the fire. And that after this is accomplished, and the brave new world begins, when all men are paid for existing, and no man must pay for his sins, as surely as water will wet us, as surely as fire will burn, the gods of the copybook headings, with terror and slaughter, return. Where were you when you became an adult? Do you remember the moment you grew up? I do. That is to say, I remember several moments when I realized I had taken yet another step toward growing up. I was in my 30s, and a birthday was coming up, and I had set for myself a goal. I wanted to finish writing a certain book by then, but I did not achieve it. No problem, I said to myself. I'll just reset the goal for this time next year. Surely I can finish my book by then. That night I woke up from a bad dream in a panic and realized I had postponed my goal by a year several times already. I went into the bathroom and splashed water on my face and looked in the mirror. And I didn't recognize the face looking back at me. That's when I remembered a silly old saying I had learned in school. Know thyself. When I first heard this quote from ancient Greek philosophy, I thought, what a ludicrous thing to say. Surely everyone knows themselves better than anyone else. As I stared at the stranger in the mirror, I started to understand that growing up was going to be a bumpy ride. I was in Germany when the Berlin Wall fell and the communist bloc collapsed, and with it the beautiful idea of financial equality and social fairness that goes back to ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, Cicero, and Plato some 2,500 years ago, and has since been put into practice by nearly 50 states, always unsuccessfully. When I took my first road trip into East Germany and saw for myself the ruined cities, the crumbling farmhouses and shredded streets, the rattling, inefficient cars and gray hand-me-down clothes, I had to think of my father. When I was a teenager and slowly awakening to the woes of the world, I had several run-ins with him over the idea of communism. There's so much money in the world, I argued earnestly. Why is it not possible to distribute it fairly? His answer was simple, so simple it just couldn't be true. Son, he said, there's no such thing as a free lunch. He was full of these dusty old nuggets. A penny saved is a penny earned, or the early bird catches the worm, or the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They were the adages of an old man who didn't understand the world was marching toward a beautiful new future, leaving him behind. But now, driving through that world of the future, and seeing how relentlessly it had been destroyed by its own ideals, my father's words came back to me. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And I shuddered at the gaping chasm between the ideals of our youth and the hard reality you see the more you experience life. Then came September 11, 2001. As the shock waves following that event rolled over us, I noticed that certain people, among them my highly educated left-leaning friends, began placing the blame on the victims. America was so corrupt, they seemed to say, so immoral, such a force for evil, that it had provoked the attack, even deserved it. If the attackers could have heard them talk, they would have applauded and said, "See, the Americans get it." But as I listened, I felt a little bit older, and I saw my priorities and my allegiances shift once more. Since then, whenever I hear someone in the Western world complaining overdramatically about the world that has given them so much, the same thought springs to mind that first came to me then. If you cannot stand up for what you have, it will be taken from you. On the wall of my kitchen in Berlin, there hangs a short rhyme in German in a frame. My girlfriend inherited it from her father. It's a kind of ironic conversation piece. When our friends come over, we laugh at it together because it's so old-fashioned. In German, it says, lerne was, spare was, leiste was, dann kannst du was, hast du was und bist du was. In English, that means learn something, save something, and do something. Then you'll know something, have something, and be something. One day, a friend and I stood in the kitchen, and he saw the rhyme, and I expected some ironic remark, but it didn't come. Instead, we just looked at each other and said, almost in unison, "Still true." And I knew we would both never be young again. Still, I can't say that I'm fully adult yet. Maybe growing up is a process that never ends. Maybe I will never be a true adult. But a few years ago, I had another one of those experiences. Like so often in history, we live, once again, in a new age of grand ideals. True equality, true inclusion, true social justice for all. Everywhere I look, new ideologies are popping up every day. Critical race theory teaches us that if you are white, you are racist. New feminism teaches us that rape is encouraged by our culture. New post-colonial theory tells us that America is responsible for all the world's ills. Not a day goes by when I don't listen to the chatter and think to myself, the emperor is naked. We all know the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. Two swindlers promise to weave a set of clothes for the emperor that is so fashionable that only smart people can see them. Of course, there are no clothes at all, and when the emperor struts through town naked, everyone is too afraid to admit they can't see the clothes for fear of exposing their own stupidity. Except for a child who calls out, "But the emperor is naked." That's us today, just as it was us yesterday, and it will be us again tomorrow. The only difference is the kid. He's not around anymore. There's no one out there to tell us that we are naked. We're on our own. And that, too, is part of growing up. About Rudyard Kipling. Joseph Rudyard Kipling, 1865 to 1936, was an English poet and novelist. He was born in Bombay, India, and named Rudyard after a lake that played a part in his parents' romance. He got his early education in England, but disliked it and got bad grades. He returned to India to work for a newspaper which he loved. When the short stories and poems made him world famous at 24, he returned to England, where he wrote his major novels, Kim and The Jungle Book. He married an American, opposed communism and Hitler, was supportive of colonialism, and received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1907. His most popular poems include If, Gunga Din, and The Gods of the Copybook Headings.